What is up, guys? This is Misfit, of course. Welcome back to OverTakes, and on tap today, we are going to be talking the APAC Summer Showdown tournament. But first, I'd like to thank everybody out there for joining us. Thank you, everybody on YouTube. Thanks to all of our subscribers, out in podcast land. Thank you very much. If you guys are new to the program, hit a subscribe, hit a like, hit the bell for alerts. We talk about Overwatch League anywhere from 3 to 4 times a week, depending on what we got going on, news-wise and match-wise and tournaments and whatnot and what have you. Or, I could just throw up random videos about thoughts I have and, different things I've seen over the week, kind of on a new course. So get this discussion going, though. But if you're new, hit the like, hit the subscribe, and the alert bell. Thanks for coming in and checking us out. Everybody else, thank you for joining us that's been here before. All right, so let's talk some APAC. All right. Didn't have much news again. We're a day or two from the last episode that I recorded, so we didn't have anything going on. So let's just dive into the APAC tournament. All right, going in, I kind of thought it was going to be cut and dry, so in a way. We all know Shanghai's good. We know New York is above average, and Guangzhou is good as well. You had your X factors of Hangzhou and Seoul, and I thought London could surprise some people, but they surprised me by how poorly they played in the first round. I don't know, they got profited is really what happened. He just went bonkers on them. He does that occasionally, and in this match, Seoul didn't do some of the stupid things it did later on in the semis, but that's, we'll get to it in a second. The overall feel of the APAC side. Now, last week we were seeing some different stuff from these guys. We weren't seeing all of the Genji play and all that kind of stuff. They were still running some Ash Tracer. They were running some Torbjorn. A lot of Torbjorn. Wow, try and say that a couple times. They ran a lot of Torbjorn. This week, I didn't recall seeing too many. A lot of the matches, I'm not going to lie, they were blowouts, kind of as expected. I watched mostly... I watched about 2 minutes of Guangzhou Chengdu, and that's all I needed to watch that shit show. I watched London, Seoul, and I watched a little bit of New York Hangzhou. I thought Hangzhou may be able to come in and play a little bit better, but they still got a lot of things to work out. And it's kind of disappointing, actually. And at the end, we're going to talk a little bit about this region. It's kind of shifting in ways. It's not as much like NA, where you know who's good and who's bad. We'll talk more about the overall feel at the end. So, all right, let's talk London Seoul. All right, London Seoul. I was expecting a lot more from London. In fact, I picked them in this one because I don't trust Seoul as far as I can throw them. The one thing I did forget was Prophet's a God tier Genji. Close to it. He's at least in the discussion, at least from season 1, he had some moments where he was just absolutely bonkers. Did some nutty things, and he did some nutty things and actually did a couple of times against Shanghai. There was other things in that match, like I said before, that happened that confused me from them, as usual. But London, they didn't look as good. They looked a little outclassed. They kept up with them a little bit. I think London, I overestimated them a little bit, but they're still in my sights as a really good team. I still think that they have the potential to do things in this region. And we're going to get to why in a little bit. Seoul did what they had to do, and they looked decent enough. They didn't look great. They looked decent enough. Basically, they let their carry go and do carry things. They had Prophet, enabled them on Genji when they had to. It did work. Took care of business. That pretty much was it. London looked okay on... London looked good on Anubis, I should say. Took him 3-2. That was about all we saw good from London. They were running a little McCree. That seemed to slow the Genji play and the whatnot down from Seoul as far as Prophet. They kind of kept Prophet in check a little bit on that map. I mean, still had moments where he went kind of crazy, but he wasn't doing what he did to them the first map and the subsequent maps after that. But it's good to see Prophet playing well. The rest of their team played like how they kind of should, I guess, if you really want to put it that way. But London just got beat. I do think future-wise, London is looking pretty good. I think they needed They need these experience moments in these tournaments to figure out, the pressure and all that kind of stuff. They're all young guys, so I'd have no problem with them losing in this. There was nothing terribly egregious. Wasn't the best performance, but Seoul did what they should do as with that roster. And I'm not ranting about Seoul because I've spent way too much oxygen doing that this year, and I'm leaving it at that. Basically, this isn't a rant. This is just, here's Seoul in a nutshell. If Prophet can't carry, they don't win. Fitz gets killed too much. Gesture feeds. Badosin is the only support they have. But that's Seoul in a nutshell. All right, now New York. All right, this match, I don't know if it was Hangzhou was just terrible or New York was good. I'm going to go with a little column A, little column B. New York took care of business. I watched some of this. I watched mostly the highlights, to be brutally honest. It was... New York clapped them on Nepal, and I saw parts of Hollywood. They 1-0'd them, and that was really enough for me to just be like, okay, Hangzhou, unfortunately, is not as good as I thought they were going to be with these additions of QOQ and Architect, which I thought, especially in a meta like this where you got Genji, I thought Architect would be really good. But New York played really well. They ran their standard stuff, their current standard stuff. Haxel, Nene, Hotbon, Off Tank, and your Jonak, Animo, Mono guys doing their thing. All I got to say about that one there. So let's move into the semis, which were also shit shows. Yeah. Two teams that won. Now, Guangzhou 3-0'd Chengdu. And if you didn't think that was going to happen, you either got dropped on your head as an infant, or you're just not watching games. Because I don't care how cute the logo is, I don't care how Yoda Chad their fucking main tank is, which he's not, and how powerful Jinmu is on doing things, which he's not. They're terrible. They are Boston level bad guys. Hangzhou is somewhere between the Washington Justice and the Gladiators right now, as far as badness. But Chengdu is terrible. Guangzhou, really good. I don't know how else to spell it out. Chengdu, no bueno. I can say it in 15 different languages if you need me to. But Guangzhou, I was high on them from the start of the season. I've said this a million times. I was a little reluctant. When Nero left, I was had with the visa thing and all that kind of stuff. I'm like, he's getting taken care of. I was kind of just like, I'm not a fan of this Eileen Happy thing. And then I was like, okay, I like this Eileen Happy thing. This Eileen Happy thing is better than the Eileen, or the Nero Happy, or Nero Eileen, or... I changed my tune a little bit. Now, they dumpstered Chengdu. We go in and they face New York. I had this semi. The other one I had London, and I had them getting 3-1 by Shanghai 3-1ing them. Seoul got absolutely shit on by the Dragons. I want to talk about the Guangzhou one a little bit more because there were some things in there that I saw New York doing that I wasn't a fan of, amongst other things. As aggressive and great as Prophet was in the match against London, he was basically put on the back foot because Fitz was dead 90% of the time, or Gesture, or both. So you can't run a hyper-aggressive Genji all the time. You got to go into fights, and you got to worry about peeling and stuff like that, and you got to take care of the yeoman's work of the damage when your Widow steps out of spawn and gets clipped instantly every fucking time. So Shanghai looked good though. They were running Diem, which was odd. Found that odd. Instead of Lip, they ran a little bit of Diem. They've been kind of doing that. I mean, yeah, I kind of get it. You want his Widowmaker in there, for sure. I like Lip, though. I still maintain he's one of the Rookie of the Year candidates. You got to go with what works, though. And if you're running Widow Genji, I want Fleta on Genji, and I want Diem on Widowmaker. It's just, that simple. But, other than that match was garbage. Soul did Soul things. Current, normal Soul things that shouldn't happen. Anyway, so Guangzhou, New York. All right. Now, this match, I had New York winning this semi. And the reason was I said, either Hacksaw or Who Are You, mostly Hacksaw, would be better than Eileen on Genji, and their support line would be better. And I also thought all around that they were just a tick better. Mecha or Mono better than Rio. So going in, all right, Rio on main tank. All right, going in. I always get confused with Rio and Ria. One's on Hangzhou and one's on Guangzhou, and that's just a confusing thing. Should just remember that Ria is off tank or flex tank. Anyway, or I should just remember what team they're on in general and not confuse myself. Anyway, so going in, I'm going, all right. The reason why I picked them in New York, I think, is a tick better here and here and here. I thought, Happy could do more work if they're running Widowmaker, McCree kind of stuff, which, it could happen. Eileen's been decent on Tracer. I'm like, but if they have to go to Tracer, Nene's really good, and you got Sabiobi. So, I had all this stuff worked out in my head perfectly. The thing I didn't realize was Eileen was going to own them on Genji. I mean, Haxel did some work. I mean, I'm not going to say that he didn't. Haxel looked good. He did not look great. But one of the main things I took away from this was the support line from Guangzhou was vastly better than Jonak and Animo. Jonak, at this point right now, and I'm bringing this question up. You guys can, add to the discussion on this. He just looked average on Baptiste. He wasn't, super aggressive, or he was, he just wasn't that normal. He didn't have that killer thing going that he normally does. They weren't afraid of him because he wasn't doing things to be afraid of. And also, he has trouble in big games. And I brought this up before in the past. The playoffs in 2018. There were times when he would just yeet his transcendence in the middle of nowhere. He did it last year, too. Off-timing transcendences. They're running Annas. Not hitting sleep darts. Not doing great. Then these are in the pressure situations. Missing crucial things. Not the whole match. Missing a crucial Bionade. Things like that. Things that he could turn the fight with. He does okay with the healing. Baptiste was doing okay. He wasn't doing anything to pull them out of oblivion, in my opinion. And the biggest difference was Chara and Shu. By a long shot. Now, I also think that Krong is a god as well, which I kind of thought him and Hotba were a little close on Sigma, but Krong is just... He's another one that you could start throwing Rookie of the Year stuff around with. Now, by definition, this match wasn't even close to 3-0, in my opinion. Filthiness of Guangzhou on the last map. I don't know if New York quit or what, but they absolutely buried them on Hanamura. It's just, once again, and I'm not saying that New York choked. I'm saying this time they underperformed. They weren't as prepared as they normally are, and they seemed average. Average to below average, in fact, I would even go. So I don't know what that says about Hangzhou's performance, but yeah, for all the good stuff they did against Hangzhou, they just failed at everything in this match against Guangzhou, which I said was going to be close, and I thought New York could win out. But that's going to wrap on the semis. In a little, we'll take a little break before we talk about the finals for a second. This region is weird now, different weird, and it's like a couple of the good teams are falling back to earth a little bit. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the meta changing, the meta shifting. Your guy's better than this guy and all that. I think people are gunning at Shanghai as well than they were earlier in the season. And I think a couple of the other teams are, I don't know. Want to say Hangzhou's going to be better, but I can't right now. Chengdu's terrible. Seoul is garbage. Seoul is garbage with one player. They're the 2007 LeBron Cavs. Or the 1988 Bulls, or I can keep going with analogies like that. One guy that carries them, and if the guy has a bad day, or the guy gets stopped. Shanghai basically did to Seoul what the Detroit Pistons would do to the Chicago Bulls. They just bullied them. Yeah, but this is getting just weird. Because before you had it defined, you're like, all right, Shanghai's the best, Chengdu's the worst. The other teams are kind of all jumbled up together. I think there's a little less jumbling now. I think some of these teams are what we thought they were, and some of them are not what we thought they were, and are worse. And none of them are Shanghai, in the worst part. They lost the match. Did they look as good, as crisp as they did? No. I think Guangzhou played them better, which we're going to talk about right now. It wasn't as good as the NA final. It was fantastic in that Shanghai did what they did against Seoul, and they said, all right, you know what? We got to do something. And they clutched up, which a good team does. But Guangzhou, in the end, ended up saying, no, we're not today. We're taking you out. So, and it started off pretty. There was a couple of moments in the first map. Guangzhou didn't look. I said, okay, maybe Guangzhou's nervous. They didn't look as good, but they managed to win 2-0. And one of the reasons why is it seemed like Shanghai, for as aggressive as they were before, they were not being as aggressive and coming out and taking the fight to Guangzhou. I think they were just worried about what they were going to do. And it was very, very odd to me that they would play like that in a championship match. They just did not. They didn't have the Shanghai feel that I had in the Summer Showdown tournament, even though they were down 0-2 to Seoul. And the game that they played against Seoul, they just want to mash Seoul every time they play them. I don't know if it's Fleta wanting to get revenge or any of that kind of stuff. But this match, I don't know. It just, they did not feel like they normally did. Did. All right, so let's dive into this final match of the tournament. We got Guangzhou taking on the Shanghai Dragons. Right now, the two best teams in APAC by far, in my opinion. I thought there was a drop-off from Shanghai down to Guangzhou. I think Guangzhou showed in this tournament, even before this match, that they are on par with Shanghai with their gameplay, especially the way Eileen's been playing, their support line's been playing, and Krong plays an unbelievable Sigma. He is absolutely ridiculous. So, first map we have Temple of Anu. We have Ilios. Ilios goes by way of the Guangzhou Charge 2-0. They pretty much, it was pretty much a good back and forth, even though they 2-0'd him. There were a couple of points where Shanghai had him, took him to 99, and then they flipped it. So it was good to start. That is where we started to see Eileen's Genji a little bit. He kind of went out there, not as much. And we saw Fleta playing like he used to when he was on Seoul on heroes like Genji, playing a little defensively, I thought. I like the guys like Sparkle playing defensively. I like him when EQO plays it a different way. He plays smart and then goes aggressive when he has to. But sometimes Fleta tends to be a little on the passive side with things for me. And some of that had to do with just Guangzhou, the way Guangzhou was playing them. You have Krong hitting bonkers amounts of accretions. I think his stats. There was one point where I think they said on one of the breaks or something that he has like an 80 or 90% accretion rate. Killed, I don't know, some stupid stat that was absolutely ridiculous. So they take map 1. Okay, all right, it's the normal argument in your brain. It's control, it'll be this, it'll be that. So then they they play Hollywood. There were a couple times on Hollywood, especially on Shanghai's attack phase, where, they barely got the cart moving. Then they started rolling it. They barely got the cart moving. There was a couple of things that they just whiffed on a couple of different things. They had a chance to take it with about a minute left, and they threw a bob in, and he went all the way into the cafe, which you don't want. Even though, because Guangzhou had set up in the corner by the elevator and all that. The old spot where you used to throw the Torbjorn turret and just fuck with people in quick play. I miss those days sometimes, but So yeah, that was a big mistake. It cost them time, is what I got, what I'm getting to. Which it was followed up by Eileen had a good blade, reset them. They had to come back, and then they started moving the card pretty good going through. Fleta was playing a little bit more aggressive on this, on the Genji. They looked better, but Guangzhou ends up. So on Hollywood, after that, Guangzhou takes over. They take the first point, and they start moving a little bit better. They had a couple of next plays in there. They're going through, and one of the things I said, on the first side, Flood was playing a little bit more aggressive. Now, there were a couple times on the second side, on the defense side for Shanghai, where, especially in the last fight, he was reacting to, okay, so Eileen goes for blade, then he goes for blade. Instead of going in and taking over the fight, he was reacting towards, okay, I have to knock some of their players out because do you see where I'm going? He was trying to defensively play Genji in a way that, it works to an extent. I mean, it worked for EQO and stuff like that, and it worked for him a couple times in this. But the last fight, he should have popped blade first and got rid of them and stopped them. Or at least slowed them down to the point where they had to reset. Because what happened was Eileen had a good blade, annihilates most of their team, and Fled is left by himself, essentially, to try and clean up the mess. He did a good job. I mean, I think he got a 3K, but it just wasn't enough, and they just pushed the cart to the point and won. Guangzhou had taken it almost all the way in. Not quite all the way in, but close. Or Guangzhou, I mean Shanghai. They got it to almost to the parking spot. My thoughts were at halftime, Shanghai usually figures something out, and they're going to come back and at least give them a fight in this. Okay, so on Gibraltar, then we have them, Shanghai, coming out. They're down 3-0 now after that mediocre performance on. I'm like, okay, we're looking at this going, yeah, Shanghai's pretty much done. So they come out on Gibraltar, and they run a Sombra Echo dive with Zarya and Winston, and I was like, okay, this isn't terrible. I wasn't the biggest fan. Echo hasn't gotten much play, but in APAC she does a little bit, and Guangzhou was a little thrown off by it, and later on it proved to be worth the while in the fight where they ended up taking it in on getting 3 points on. They took it all the way in on Gibraltar. The Guangzhou ended up playing a Torbjorn to try and counter some of the Echo stuff. It worked a little bit, but in the end, they had too much damage going on. And then the Sombra, they brought Lip in for this map too, by the way. Forgot to mention that. Where they were playing DM most of the other time with the Widow, and they brought in Lip. It kind of worked. It threw them off. I don't think they were expecting the Echo dive, even though it's been run a little bit more in APAC than it has been in NA in recent times. Obviously, she was banned there for a little bit. It worked. It was weird, but it wasn't as weird as their defense, which I'm going to say. I don't want to say it didn't work, but they ran a double hit scan of McCree and Soldier. I think they thought they were going to do something different than they did. They were just running the flat Genji dive scenario. I want to say it didn't work. They ended up switching up to a more normalish composition later on. They got off the Winston McCree because they just got owned. Like I said, I don't want to say it didn't work, but they kind of got owned because they just brought a Widow out and just eliminated the threat of any kind of Soldier McCree thing. And then eventually they went back to the Echo, the Echo Sombra scenario, and then that worked. They stopped them. They only got 1 point, and then that takes us to the next map, which was Busan, which was close. Now this one, the Shanghai continued on with the Echo Sombra on the first point, which they had a chance to win, but they C9'd. As per usual, it seems like lately in the Overwatch League, C9'd, and this one was an actual. They all left the point. That was a textbook C9, which they excel at. They're somewhere in the Mayhem range of excelling at leaving points and payloads and stuff like that. Then Guangzhou comes back, and then we get Mecha Base, and that was a little back and forth. But Fearos had a couple of big shatters on Reinhardt in there, and that kind of sealed that one. So so now we're getting close. Now they're going to reverse sweep them like they did Seoul. Okay, but there's a large difference here. The Guangzhou Charge are not the Seoul Dynasty. I'm sorry, I said Mecha Base. I meant Shrine. The final point was Shrine on the last map. Sorry about that. Sometimes those control maps, I mix all the names up. I end up mixing all the names up, and that's just bad on my part. Anyway, okay, so then we move on to Blizzard World. Shanghai tried to counter the normal composition, the meta comp picks that Guangzhou's run. They tried to run Tracer. It worked. They took the point pretty quick, then they just failed. They stalled out towards before the second point, and then Guangzhou took over, and on the back of Eileen, Krong, and Happy, they just roll the card in to second point and won the match. Now, they played phenomenally, Guangzhou. Now, the question is right now, I don't think Shanghai played terrible, but they didn't look as good as Guangzhou on the whole. As a whole, if you look at the whole picture of this match, it's not like the NA tournament where there are a couple of points where Paris could have lost to San Francisco, could have lost to Philadelphia. This one was Guangzhou's to blow. It was not anything out of their power. They played pretty much flawlessly. They lost a couple of maps. They had a couple of they weren't ready for that. Some of the stuff they were running on Gibraltar, I don't think. Yeah, and there were a couple fights here and there on Anubis and a couple other maps that you could have said maybe could have gone Shanghai's way. But on the whole, Guangzhou played phenomenally. Krong, Rio, their support line with Chara and Shu, and then Happy and Eileen were just ridiculous. It just begs the question right now, are they the best team in APAC? We may leave it at that on this episode. We might, this might be a question we'll be answering later on next week. Feel free to answer in the comments, guys. Has Guangzhou taken over the number one spot? Not just from this one match particularly, but from this whole stage. Do you guys think it's meta-dependent, or do you think there's something to this? I think when they meet up again, it could be a different story. I think they're pretty close, but I'm leaning towards the Charge a little bit. I've been high on the Charge, but watching Krong play, and Void and Feelers were fantastic in this match too, and so was Fleta, and they weren't bad at all. They just were not as good as Guangzhou. There were a couple of bad plays. That C9 was bad, but didn't come back to bite them. They won the map. That is my question. Is Guangzhou the best in APAC? There are other questions. Now, let's do a whole tournament wrap-up really quick, and then we're going to call this one a day, and then we'll see you at the beginning of the week with some power rankings, and then we'll hit you with some previews for the start of Countdown Cup. The start of the August thing. We're going to call it the August tournament, because I can't call it the Countdown Cup because it makes me shudder. I would love to call it something like you would hear on WWE, but it's something like a grade school Magic the Gathering tournament is called. So we'll call it that, or some idiocy on college football on Saturday in the beginning of November that they have to shut down Saturday, or a couple of things I pulled away from this tournament. The Brig Genji thing, when run right, is unstoppable, which is why they're smashing their Brig into the ground again. I think in APAC especially, we have some teams flipping around. And I think it's become Shanghai and Guangzhou, and then about a 4,000-foot cliff to the next team, which may be New York, which may be Seoul, which may be Hangzhou. And then all the way into the center of the earth, or the seventh plane of hell, you have the Chengdu Hunters. That's how far below the rest of these guys they are. NA is odd. I think Paris is up there. As long as Genji's viable, you're going to have them in the mix. And on the whole, though, I think even if you get a double hit scan, things like that, I think they're going to be in the top 5. I still think San Francisco is the best, and they lost the match. Philly might have to answer some questions. Other teams might have to answer some questions. But this tournament itself, I like the tournament format. I think that's one of the another thing I pulled away. It's more exciting. Yeah, there were blowouts in APAC. It wasn't as good as the NA tournament this time around because the two teams in APAC that are the best right now are miles better than the rest of the pack. New York is not as good as advertised as usual. We're getting towards the end of the season, and they're New Yorking. Hangzhou is a mess. Once they get together, that team, though, I think they can be good. I just don't understand what's going on. I think they can work it out. Especially, they've had a break to figure out what they're doing wrong, all that kind of stuff. I think they can come back. They might be able to pull closer to Guangzhou and Shanghai. I don't know if that's possible with the amount of time that's left in the season, though. But pull away from this tournament specifically, Guangzhou has solidified themselves as possibly a top 5 team in the whole of the Overwatch League. And it's not necessarily they got this god player, they got that god player. It's this team is playing cohesively and great. And without the two elements, I thought that was going to make them a lot better than they were last year, which is Nero and Neptuno. Side note, I think that Krong is probably the best player on this team. She was underrated, and I did not know Eileen was good on Genji or whatever else he was doing. He played phenomenally. But props to them. They beat Shanghai, and I think they might have raced past them. Well, all right, raced past them, and that's a hot take. We'll call it they edged past them a little bit. But that is going to do it, guys, for this one. Thank you all for joining. Thanks to everyone out there in YouTube land for all of your support, all the comments. Keep them coming. Let's keep talking about this. Everybody out there in podcast land, thank you very much. Thanks for all of the listens, subscriptions, follows, all that kind of stuff. If you're on iTunes, please give me a review. That would be fantastic. Everybody else on Spotify and your podcatcher of choice, thank you very much. That is going to do it, guys. We will see you at the beginning of the week with some power rankings. Get ready for that. They're going to be pretty spicy. I know they're going to make some of you guys scratch your head. But you kind of have heard where I'm going, what teams I like, what teams I don't like. Where I slot them, that's going to be the interesting thing. So stay tuned for that, and then we're going to dive right into, I'm sure there's going to be some news coming up on hero pools and all that stuff. If anything happens between now and then, I will do a small episode. We'll talk about that for a minute, and then we will dive into the final month of the tournament, or the final month's tournament, the August tournament, the formerly known as Countdown Cup tournament, whatever you want to call it. We will talk about that. And you guys have a good rest of your evening, afternoon, whenever you listen to this. Thank you very much. Misfit out. Have a good night.